As many of you know, I completed my presidency in May of this year. Now, during this time, I received many invitations for overseas visits. And I have been given a lot of thoughts on where I should make my first stop once I am rested. Finally, I decided that one of the most meaningful and important things I would like to do is to connect and be among like-minded friends. Friends who have dedicated their lives and careers to safeguard democracy and its values. Friends who are not afraid of intimidation and thrive when challenged. That means friends like you.
That is former President Tsai Ing-wen attending the 28th Forum 2000 in Prague, delivering her first overseas speech after her presidency. As she is traveling in some European countries, namely France, Belgium, and the Czech Republic. But why did she choose these three countries as the destinations for her first overseas trip? You're listening to The Divide. My name is Iris Xu. This week, we're going to talk about Taiwan and Europe's relations.
My name is Marcin Jerzewski, and I'm the head of Taiwan Office of the European Values Center for Security Policy. We are a Prague, Czechia-based think tank and the first European think tank to have established a permanent office in Taiwan.
Marcin, besides heading the Taiwan office of the European Values Center for Security Policy, he also serves as an analyst contributing to the center's research on Taiwan and the broader Indo-Pacific region. And here's Marcin explaining the importance of the trip.
I think that it's extremely symbolically rich for Tsai Ing-wen to have chosen Europe as the first destination for her overseas visit after the end of her tenure. One of the key tenets of Tsai Ing-wen's foreign policy was diversification of Taiwan's relations. While Taipei maintains strong ties with its traditional allies, mainly Washington, D.C. and Tokyo, Tsai Ing-wen already in 2016 put in place the new southbound policy that strengthened the nation's outreach to South Asia, Southeast Asia, and Australia and Aotearoa, New Zealand. And in her second presidential term, she really ushered in a new era of openness in relations between Taiwan and Europe, and specifically Central Eastern European countries. That's why I think it's really important that with her visit, Tsai Ing-wen is sending a message to European partners saying that despite domestic political changes in Taiwan and in Europe during this election super year 2024, Taiwan still matters to Europe, and Europe still matters to Taiwan.
If you're a Czech or a Taiwanese like me, you probably sense it too, that the Czech Republic and Taiwan have grown closer in their relations in recent years. But why is that?
There are two main dimensions of the current positive dynamics between Prague and Taipei. There is the normative component to the relationship and the pragmatic component to the relationship. During the last elections in the Czech Republic in 2021, we saw a formation of a liberal coalition that makes really clear references to the legacy of Václav Havel, the democratically elected leader of the Czech Republic during the pivotal era of democratic transition. And Václav Havel, up until now, is still really the poster child for Czechia breaking free as a former part of Czechoslovakia, a satellite state of the Soviet Union, and becoming a liberal democratic state. And Václav Havel himself was a very strong friend of Taiwan in 1995 when he served as Czechia's president. Defying his own foreign minister, he advocated for Taiwan's greater inclusion in the international society and international organizations, including the United Nations, on the floor of the General Assembly during the 50th anniversary of the establishment of the United Nations. So overall, in its foreign policy posture, the government of Petr Fiala and with Jan Lipavsky at the helm of the Czech Foreign Ministry have said that they want to continue the Havelian tradition of rule-based, values-based foreign policy outreach. And I believe that the turn to Taiwan, an Asian shining city upon a hill in terms of upholding principles of democracy, good governance, and rule of law, is a part of it. At the same time, I mentioned that there is also a pragmatic dimension. Already before this newfound focus on normative alignment between Prague and Taipei began to redefine ties between both sides in a positive way, there has been quite a lot of flow of Taiwanese capital into the Czech Republic. For example, Foxconn is one of the largest investors in the Czech Republic and is generally viewed very favorably by people in Czechia as a good employer who provided quality workplaces to previously economically deprived parts of the country. Now, as European countries seek to pursue strategic autonomy, and while Taiwan is also seeking to diversify its economic relations, a pivotal component of the nation's economic security strategy, new synergies emerge between Czechia and Taiwan, particularly in light of TSMC's first investment in Europe in Dresden, a German city located very close to the Czech border. Parts of the Czech Republic, including the capital city of Prague, Brno, an important technological and academic city in the southeastern part of the country and the nation's second largest city, as well as Ústecký kraj, a part of Czechia bordering Germany's Saxonia, emerge as important nodes in the newly emerging chip ecosystem in Europe, to which Taiwan is an important contributor.
But why France, Belgium, and the Czech Republic?
I believe that the itinerary of the visit is quite well balanced. We already know that Tsai Ing-wen will make an appearance at Forum 2000, a major foreign policy conference held in the Czech Republic. And here it's important to bear in mind that Forum 2000 as a conference format, as well as the foundation behind the event under the same name, was co-founded by Václav Havel himself. So this symbolism really resounds as Tsai Ing-wen makes an appearance at the event. Already as the second former president of Taiwan, as previously President Lee Teng-hui also made an appearance at Forum 2000. So Czechia, which has sought to position itself as one of the closest collaborators of Taiwan in Europe, makes sense as a choice of destination for President Tsai. Belgium is also understandable. Brussels is frequently referred to as the capital of Europe, as a city that houses many of the institutions of the European Union. It's one of the seats of the European Parliament, for example, that within the context of the labyrinthine European Union bureaucracy has positioned itself as one of the most Taiwan-friendly bodies. So Tsai Ing-wen, when she visits Brussels, will be able to engage with experts and potentially also officials who are responsible for shaping approach of Europe to China and Taiwan at the bloc level. Whenever we talk about relations between Europe and any other external partner, in this case Taiwan, we should look at these relations at two levels. Firstly, at the level of EU27, a bloc that has the right to make collective decisions regarding its external action, for example, under the Common Foreign and Security Policy and Common Defense and Security Policy, but then also at on a second level, at the level of individual member states. So here, Tsai Ing-wen is able to sort of hit two nails right on the head with visits to important member states, but also interactions with relevant stakeholders at the level of EU27. And then we also have France. This is the one stop about which we know the least at this point, but I also think that it's really historic. If the visit comes to fruition, as various news outlets have reported, it will be a first time that a former leader of Taiwan visits France. Of course, France as a major member state in terms of the size of its economy, the size of its population, which then has ramifications for France's voting power in European decision-making processes at the level of EU27, is an extremely important player in shaping the EU's external action. So this visit can be quite consequential, and again, in terms of balance, I think that it's important that Tsai Ing-wen will visit not only a country in Central and Eastern Europe, but also a Western European member state.
But is this trip going to bring any change in terms of European policy towards Taiwan?
When it comes to Taiwan's international posture, I think that we often face a dichotomy between two S words, symbolism and substance. And Tsai Ing-wen, as a former president who currently does not have an official function, is not a technical worker. She's not a technocrat. So we cannot really expect Tsai Ing-wen to step into her previous role of, for example, a trade negotiator and carry out high-level dialogues about any sort of, say, agreement on economic cooperation between Europe and Taiwan. So expectation management is very important. In the context of the two S-word dichotomy, this visit is much richer in symbolism than it will be in substance. But that's also okay, because telegraphing important messages vis-a-vis European partners is also a part of socializing the idea that more can be done within the context of relations between Taiwan and Europe, even bearing in mind limitations of European Union member states' respective One China policies. So, to me, this visit, which has been endorsed by the presidential office and President Lai Ching-te, we should bear in mind that Tsai Ing-wen is not going there alone. She will be accompanied by one of her closest associates during her tenure, who now still works as an advisor on social resilience within the National Security Council under the presidential office, sends this message of continuity, that Europe was extremely important for Tsai Ing-wen, and even though Lai Ching-te from the same party has a right to shape Taiwan's foreign policy in an idiosyncratic way, he's not doing away with the European pillar of Taiwan's quest for broader international space.
It appears that there's a lot of parallels between the Czech Republic's and Taiwan's history.
Absolutely. In political science, we consider Czechia and Taiwan to be parts of the third wave of democratization. So the concept of waves of democratization was conceived by Samuel Huntington, and the third wave of democratization, which is deemed to have commenced with the Cardassian Revolution in Portugal, is the largest, both in terms of number of countries involved and the populations involved, and also the regions involved of the three waves. So the Czech Republic and Taiwan started to embark on the pathway to democracy around the same time. In Taiwan, the martial law was lifted in most of the free area in 1987, and at the time we also saw a wind of change in Central and Eastern Europe that included Czechoslovakia. Czechoslovakia formally dissolved, and the Czech Republic was formed in 1993, which was an important time for Taiwan, as well as the country was gearing up for the first direct presidential elections that came 3 years later. It was already in the 1990s, during this era of transition, that Czechia and Taiwan began to explore ways to interact with one another. The representative office of Taipei in Prague was established in 1992, so even before the formal dissolution of Czechoslovakia. So these historical parallels and the similar dynamics were an underpinning for the first wave of openness between the two sides. But absolutely, Czechia up until today continues to feel the pressure from the Russian Federation that is quite unrestrained in its belligerence and ambitions to realize its regional hegemonic aspirations. And Czechia was able to join collective organizations. So in 1999, Czechia became a member of the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, NATO. 5 years later, it became a member of the European Union. So Prague is able to benefit from some of the Czechia is able to benefit from an increased sense of security warranted by collective security arrangements, mainly of NATO, but to some extent also the European Union. Taiwan, amid its contested statehood, does not have an ability to participate in such schemes. Also, the patterns of regional integration in the Asia-Pacific region are quite divergent from the ones that we observe in Europe, but definitely we can talk about parallels in terms of Chinese regional hegemonic ambitions and Russia's regional hegemonic ambitions. I think that these comparisons are increasingly relevant as we see a growing confluence of strategic interests between Beijing and Moscow that leaders on both sides, Xi Jinping and Vladimir Putin, have also called an unwavering, unbreakable friendship.
Have there been any pushbacks or different reactions from other European countries or parties?
So far, we have not seen much opposition about this trip from other European countries, but we have to bear in mind that while, particularly after the onset of full-scale Russian invasion in Ukraine, Europe has woken up to the reality that Russia is indeed the largest security threat to the continent, waging the largest kinetic war on the continent since the end of the Second World War. The attitudes towards China are much more divergent. And the common foreign and security policy making is one of the domains of European Union policy making where principle of unanimity is still upheld. This means that countries need to achieve consensus and have to agree on this consensual solution to any issue that they deal with, which sometimes might result in effective dilution of the language or of actions that the EU might use against its competitors or rivals, including the PRC. And different member states have different opinions on why or why not to engage Taiwan. So sometimes economic interests are at play. Some European Union member states, for example, Germany, ran a positive trade balance with China. Some critical sectors, for example, in Germany, automotive sectors are very politically influential and therefore put a lot of pressure on political elites not to antagonize China, for example, by pursuing closer ties with Taiwan. In other cases, domestic politics are at play. So, for example, one of the countries that is very hesitant to allow any EU-level engagements with Taiwan to deepen is Cyprus. And that's because since 1974, the northern part of Cyprus has been occupied by Turkey, which proclaimed the Turkish Republic of Northern Cyprus in those territories. And the government of Cyprus explicitly talks about their fears that a so-called Taiwan solution to Northern Cyprus might emerge. So what that would mean is that while the Turkish Republic of Northern Cyprus would remain officially unrecognized, countries around the world might develop informal, albeit substantial relations with it, particularly in the economic domain, which is precisely what is happening with Taiwan. The Republic of China has only 12 remaining formal diplomatic allies, but is able to engage in substantive exchanges with many partners internationally. So it's due to the geographical distance, due to misunderstanding of China, and due to competing national interests that it's more difficult to forge consensus on what to do with Taiwan and what not to do with Taiwan on the EU level. Those constraints are lower on members of the European Parliament, and therefore it's the Assembly that has emerged as the most Taiwan-friendly body within the context of the European Union institutional structure. But we did hear some vocal opposition to Tsai Ing-wen's visit to Europe, and it came unsurprisingly from the other side of the strait. So after the news broke that Tsai Ing-wen will indeed travel to the Czech Republic and speak at Forum 2000 in the Czech capital, authorities of the People's Republic of China explicitly called on Czechia to adhere to the PRC's formulation of One China principle and prevent Tsai Ing-wen from visiting.